When you were a kid, there were worms everywhere. When I was a kid, it seemed like worms were a massive part of the world. I mean, I remember it would rain at school and worms would flood the sidewalks. Or I would dig holes to find dinosaur bones and be disappointed yet intrigued to only find bunches of worms. Now, I know that worms still exist, and in fact, I see them quite frequently because I dig holes for a living. But I'm not asking what happened to the worms. I'm asking, why aren't there more? Okay, I know my last video was about worms and this isn't a worm channel, but thinking more and more about worms has led me down a rabbit hole, okay? Anyway, back to my question. Why aren't there more worms? I mean, they eat dirt. It's not like there's a lack of a food source. Why can't they just breed and breed and breed? Well, that's my first mistake. They do just breed and breed and breed. In fact, worms have bred with each other so much that they make up over 4/5 of the world's organisms. This means that for every human, for every you, there are over 50 billion worms. 50 billion with a B. B, billy, billion, billy. Billy! It's important to note that most of these worms are microscopic, so they may make up over 4/5 of the world's organisms in numbers, but not necessarily in their mass. Anyway, that ends up meaning that there are around this many worms on the planet. A number I cannot say. So I was wrong. There is definitely a surplus of worms, but most of these are nematodes that we would barely recognize as worms. The squirrely little guys we all think of course, are earthworms, the cool pink ones. These big guys. So what are those slimy beasts up to, and why aren't they the kings of the soil anymore? Well, as it turns out, they don't really eat dirt. It's more like they're going after nutrient-rich food sources like leaves and fruits, but in trying to get this food, they actually just eat all the dirt that's in their way. For example, a worm really can't just live off of soil that's primarily clay. They really need decaying plants to live off of. But that leads to a problem. You see, forests in North America actually have existed without earthworms entirely for the last 10,000 years. It wasn't until the European settlers came over bringing fertilized soil with them that earthworms were reintroduced to the continent. So why is this a problem? Earthworms eat leaves, their poop becomes fertilized. You know, we all learned this in 2nd grade. Put your watermelon rind in the compost with the worms, and the worms will eat said watermelon rind and conquer it and turn it into nutrient-rich soil. And that's true. For most worms, that is. Now, there's well over 5,000 earthworm species, most of them great for plants, but around 17 of those species are not as great for some ecosystems like we were promised as kids. There's a few reasons for this, but the main one is that a lot of forests rely on their thick leaf layer to be broken down and recycled for new trees to grow. This ground cover is, in a way, a forest's entire investment into the next generations and is a vital part of every forest. So how do these invasive worms hurt the trees? Well, it's mainly this guy, the Asian jumping worm, and they eat leaves. The leaves that newer trees need to grow. These guys are described as worms on steroids because they wiggle around super sporadically and can jump up to a foot high. After years of research, scientists have concluded that carbon levels in the soil, not in the atmosphere, in the soil have plummeted in the boreal forests. Boreal forests are this northern part of the world. And trees, of course, need carbon to grow, so they're taking away their main food source. But wait, have we lost all hope? Is this entire massive biome doomed to these worms? In a way, there's not much data that shows the forest fighting back, or beating these worms back into the dirt they came from. But that's because these worms move extremely slowly, and the majority of these forests haven't even seen them yet. In a way, we haven't seen the forest fighting back because they haven't had enough time to evolve yet. It's important to remember that everything was an invasive species once. I mean, even the newer species of trees were once invasive to the trees that don't exist there anymore. The fall of some things gives room for new life to grow, and even though there may be huge swings and battles between the old life and the new, it's important to remember that nature always ends up finding its harmony in one way or another. So will the worms take over these boreal forests, or will the conifers stand a fighting chance? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this concept and want to see more just like it, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.